All right, we are live. This is very exciting. All right, welcome everybody. My name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist, and today we are going live to teach you how to paint I Love You to the Moon and Back Again. And so this is using one of our beautiful paint kits. So let me give you a quick visual of what the traceable looks like. So we have the option of adding these words, which a lot of people love. It's a favorite. So you have that option. We also include different options too, just basic generic words like thankful, love, peace, etc. We have lots of different options. You can overlay that too. And then we also have the line art. And then we have the transfer paper. So you always want to make sure that you have the dull side facing up. This is our gray dull side. And then you want to place the shiny side facing the canvas. And then we just make it really easy where you just pretty much just center it. And then you just use any basic pencil, which that does come with your kit, or a colored pencil. And yay! Hello! Hi, Billy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. All right, and let's see. Oh, and speaking of all that, if I don't see all your comments as we go, I always come back and say hello to everybody afterwards and respond to any questions too. All right, so let's see here. Transfer paper, traceable, got all that covered. So I'm going to go ahead and lift this off here. I've looked ahead so that you wouldn't have to watch me trace. I try to keep it, I do the original to begin with, and then when it comes down to doing repeats of the same pattern, I like to keep it exactly the same so you know exactly what you're getting when you buy the kit. So, ta-da, there it is. All right, so this is definitely a favorite. We probably introduced this 6 years ago, I want to say. That's how long ago it was. I think back in 2014, but just came out with the painting kit this year. So it's a really awesome classic. People love it for their nurseries. I am going to change up a little bit of the coloring in the back. I think when I do it in the class, I usually just do an all black background, but I want to make sure that we preserve the lettering and make it really easy to go ahead and work around that. So I'm going to lighten that up a little bit, make it easier for beginners to do. So because a lot of people get a little bit concerned about their lettering, they want to make sure it's perfect. I personally am not a big fan of perfect lettering. I like personable lettering. So I love to see the hand, or the style rather, of that person come through. Even if it's, not perfect, I just love it. So to me, that just makes it more interesting and awesome. My honey bear's here. You should come.
I brought you a delicious snack. Delicious snow day snack.
Let's show everybody.
Just a little snack.
Look, y'all.
You need soda?
No, I'll just do water.
Okay.
Thank you, sweetie pie.
Got everything you need?
I do.
All right, I love you.
Yeah, I'm not drinking yet. It's kind of early. So,
I am.
do you want to see? Yeah, it's snowing here. It's snowing a lot here in Guthrie. Guthrie, Oklahoma is where we're at right now. This is what my honey bear made for me. He made pizza. He's so sweet. He always cooks for me because I am a terrible cook, and I've had, one kitchen fire. Only one. You don't want me in the kitchen. It's not right. And then I melted a spatula once, and then I gave up after that. All right, I'm going to put that off to the side. That'll be my little treat whenever I get done, my painting treat. So excited. Okay, so, and by the way, this is like a whole brand new way to teach with the dual screen and everything. I'm still working out the kinks. I love the visuals. I'm super happy with that. We're still working on sound because I've lost my music. It makes me sad that we lost all my ambient music. So we're going to have to work on that. So be patient with me. I'm getting it all worked. I'm turning into a real geek, so it's all going to be awesome. All right. So here we go. Let's see. So I have all my tracing done. I've got my lettering done, and we are going to start to work on our background first. We're going to do background first. All right. So I'm going to start off with some light grays here, and then we're going to expand out to some dark night sky. So to begin with, we have our painting kit colors. I want to make sure and show you what comes with the painting kit. So Titanium white is what comes with your kit, and then also a Mars black. Now, I use so much paint here in the studio that I like to go ahead and sometimes I use big quantities. So that's why these guys are kind of handy for me. So we'll put that off to the side. And then let's do a little bit of some black here. Eventually. Yeah, let's do more of that. And your painting kit paint is actually much nicer than this, which is great. If you've ever been to my classes, we have to use, this is this student grade quality paint. And so it's very fluid, moves very well on the canvas, but it is thinner than what's in your paint kit. So these are very rich, premium quality paint. So they're a little bit heavier, usually require you to add a little bit more water to the mix to make it a bit more fluid on the canvas. All right, so we have a little paint plate that's all set up here, ready to go. And then I'm going to be using the Mama brush here. This is a 1/2 inch Taklon flat brush. And I'm going to grab just a little bit of some white here. And then I got a little bit of something. Okay. And then just a tiny amount of black. We're going to mix that together. That will give me a really pretty light gray to start with. All right. So initially here, I'm going to go ahead and come in and around my moon. And then I went ahead and did a little bit of a permanent marker treatment with my lettering there so that it would stay preserved and it will actually bleed through and I won't lose it that way. So that's very helpful. So I'm going to circle around this shape and I'm going to go ahead and when you want to circle around something, you can go ahead and use the line edge. Yay! Yes, thank you. Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much. Oh, yes, thank you so much, Billy. I appreciate that. I will. That's a great idea. Yeah, he is a real pro with all this stuff. I need help for sure. Yeah. I always need help, but yeah. Yes, and my honey bear is so sweet. He always cooks for me. He also wants to make sure that the kitchen never burns down, so. Yeah, I've had my moments. I didn't have a major kitchen fire. Wasn't too bad. I caught it in time, but it was kind of scary. So I think it's a problem when you have a fear of something. So I'm fearful of fire and sharp objects. So that kind of creates some issues for me. If you can just imagine in the kitchen, knives and flame, it's like the whole way you have to cook. I don't do very well. And so I tend to kind of suck myself out. So I'll stick to this. This is easier. See, just soft objects, no fire. I'm good. All right, so I'm going to work in some light gray here to start with, and I'm going to do a circular motion, and then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of feather this out to the background. And I want to make sure that I go out just far enough to where I cover up all my lettering. And then once I'm beyond that point in a circle, then I know I can start to gradually get a little bit darker. And then I'll start to fade into more of like a midnight sky. So, but I'm going to make sure I get all this covered up here. That way I know I'm in the clear and my lettering will definitely pop out and stay preserved. So, and this will kind of look like just a soft glow of the moon. So again, just circular motion and just kind of circle this around. Take it all the way around. And yes, thank you for the compliment too on the new setup. I've been really wanting to do this for a while, and it's taken me a while to figure out the path to get it done. Finally figured that out. And then we're still working out the sound a little bit. I'm trying to have a little bit of my ambient music happening in the back, but I'm struggling a little bit. It's a bit tinny right now. And so that I don't know if I can get that fixed or not, because I have much better sound with a You can see this really nice mic here in front of me. It's really nice. The problem is it just picks up everything. And I almost had an easier time with sound before because I didn't have a very good mic. So just all kinds of interesting new things to learn. So, all right, so circular motions that come all the way around here. And then migrating out, we want to go ahead and start to darken this up a little bit. So once I'm going to go ahead and feather this out a little bit, get a little bit more of a glow. Okay, little circular motions. Now I'm going to go ahead and work in a little bit more of the black now that I'm working in. Again, just keeping it in a circular pattern. And see, this paint is still wet, so I'm going to have a nice soft blend. And even if you don't see how this is looking like just a hard line between black and gray, you can always come back in and soften that out. So I worked back in with some lighter shades of the white so that it would have a nice transition there. I want to make that real soft. So you can work back in between those two colors to where it does gradually go back and forth. So we're going to come back around, and again, see, the acrylic paint is setting up and drying so fast that sometimes you do have to rework to re-blend your transition. So I'm going to take this all the way around here. So I've got my black in place, getting more so that way, but I want to make sure I rework that transition a little bit to where it gets a nice soft fade. So it's just reapplying pressure. And then sometimes if it gets too dark, I need to do a quick little wipe, work back into the white, and then softly fade in here. It's looking good. All right, starting to look really awesome. So I've got starting to get my black established here. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse that a little bit. It has a lot of white in it. And so I'm going to rinse it off, dry it off a little bit. And I'm going to go right back into my black. And I'll start to cut in around that shape. See, now we've got that black that can go into our background here. And I'm going to switch back and forth here a little bit. I'm going to come back in. If you're working with your kit and you only got the 3 brushes, I would alternate between Little Buddy and Mama. And then ideally, if you do have more than one big brush, then you can work back with a little bit of white with Mama, like a second Mama. So we do have extra brush kits on our website so that if you need extra brushes, you can have like a backup. So I'm going to do a little bit of back and forth here. And then, one other thing too you can do is a little bit of water on this could really help. I'm going to add a little bit of water. So here's my mom. I'm coming back in with a little bit of water, and that helps softly blend that too. Another reason why I'm so happy to have my canvas down flat is because I can actually teach more with water. There's so much more that you can do, and definitely is so much easier to do that with this smaller. This is 11 by 14, so it's smaller. It's easier to manipulate on a flat surface, like a coffee table or a dining room table. There's a lot more fun little things that you can play around with water. I've always wanted to do this, but it was very challenging to do this in a big show because we've got our paintings up on easels. And when you're up on an easel, I'm not saying it's impossible, but for most beginners, when you start trying to add water, I usually just discourage it entirely because of all the water runs that happen. And so now it's really nice that we're able to really teach it and have people enjoy experimenting with the water. And if it's flat, you don't have to worry about water runs. So that's awesome. So sometimes you have to worry a little bit about excessive puddles, but that's okay. So this does take a little bit of time, working back and forth here. But it is, I think, a very therapeutic process. All right, so, and keep in mind that little circle right in the middle, that's going to be your moon. So I think I'm almost at that point where I've got most of my soft fade really worked out. And then I'll be working in the black all around the edges and then just filling in the rest of this night sky. Now, something else I want to tell you about all this black is that it looks like it's all going to dry in one uniform color and that you won't see brush strokes. It appears that way at first, but one of the things that I've noticed with black is that until you put several coats on, you can actually see a lot of brush strokes, and as it dries, it does become a little bit more transparent. So I always encourage people to do a little bit of a cross stroke into those larger areas so that you have a little bit more texture as you place the black in. So that really will reflect the light in a more positive way in that background so that even when it dries, you're just going to see lots of little tiny cross strokes back and forth, and it has a really pretty texture to it. It just really reflects the light really beautifully, as opposed to streaky strokes, which a lot of times you'll end up seeing, and you won't. A lot of times people aren't real happy with the results that way. So again, as much as you can, try to remember to do just little tiny cross strokes, just back and forth. And that will really help out a lot. Again, it's a really subtle thing, and you don't necessarily notice it that much in the beginning. But as it dries, and especially when the sunlight hits it, you'll really notice it, and you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, now I'm coming around a little tiny branch here. Working into our background. And I'm going to crisscross that out as I feather it out. And then we do have some little detail work we're going to have to work in there. So we'll have to switch over to a smaller brush as I work into those smaller areas. But I'm going to have fun just placing in all of this really beautiful black to begin with. Let's scoot up my paint here a little bit. I'm kind of off the table. So lots of little cross strokes. All right, so I'm just curious if anybody has any fabulous recommendations for Christmas films we can all appreciate and enjoy. See what y'all got for me. If anybody wants to leave that in the comments. I just watched, gosh, I always butcher the title of it, but I think it's called Heartland Christmas, I think. And it was filmed in Guthrie, and it reminds you of Hallmark. It's definitely very Hallmark. It's not produced by Hallmark, but it definitely reminds you of that. And I watched it on Netflix, and they say it was the #1 requested Christmas film last year on Hulu. So, but it was really interesting because I got to see a lot of my friends in it that were extras. And then it's just really kind of surreal seeing your own town in a movie. And the other cool thing was they normally, when they film it, they film in Guthrie all the time, but they usually try to obscure the fact that it's Guthrie, and they never actually say we're in Guthrie. They usually pretend that they're somewhere else in the movie. And so it was really interesting that they actually said we're in Guthrie. So it's kind of fun. And they really highlighted our sweet little town. So it was pretty cool. And so if you do watch it, it definitely shows, I think it's filmed mostly at the Dominion House here, which is a beautiful place. It's a place where you can have dinner, and now they have those, they're not igloos, but they look like igloos. And they're clear, and they've got like a whole seating area and a little fire pit inside, and they're really cool. Not literally cool, but just like cool. Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, it's a fun place. There's a lot of black here. So we have lots and lots of black. So again, I'm just continuing on with lots of little cross strokes, just back and forth. Just keep that lovely texture happening. Again, I promise it is going to serve you well when it dries, and you're going to see how the light is reflected on the surface. So again, just hold it kind of like out to the side, and just, it feels like you make tiny little X's over and over again. And at least make that your finishing touch whenever you do come in for your last coat. All right, so now we're doing a little bit of cut-in work around the roses. And I'm getting into as much of the wide open space that I can. And then pretty quick, I'm going to have to switch over to a much smaller brush because we have all this, you can see it, just lots of little bitty cut-in work. Lots of little tiny areas we have to work into. But I'll do as much as I can here. It's looking good. All right, so definitely getting close to a smaller brush. All right, so we've done some great work now, and now it is time for some cut-in work. It's very exciting. Wow, this chick is easily excited. Yes, I am. I just, you know. Hey, I live in Guthrie. You know, what do you expect? This is a great time in Guthrie, Oklahoma. All right, so now I have my little buddy brush. Look at that little flat brush. And I'm going to go ahead and work around these little edges here. And I'll do as much as I can with Little Buddy. Little Buddy is so awesome. So it can work into a lot of little areas, but I still love it because see how it has that little tiny thin line edge. So that can really help when you're doing long lines. So that's very helpful. But there's a lot of little tiny curls in here, little tiny intricate places. So very quickly, we're going to have to probably switch over to our little bit brush. It's coming pretty quick. All right, so again, this is Little Buddy, my little 1/4 inch flat brush, and I'm still just working in Mars Black. Let's see, I have another little line there. Let's see where I'm at. I don't want to block your view too much, but I do have to get in here. So in some of these areas, you can see I'm getting really close to a little bit more of that light gray. And so a couple of different options you can do here. If you run into some areas here where you can see it, you don't have the nice soft blend between the two shades, this black and that light gray. So you can just come back over that with a lot of the beautiful greenery that we'll be finishing up with towards the end. So that's one way to, kind of obscure all that's happening right there. That's still a little bit rough. So again, this is a painting that is definitely designed to be fun and easy for beginners. That's the way all of our painting kits are. I keep it simple. And very therapeutic. Because the feedback that I hear the most is that people feel like they just feel normal again. Or they don't think at all. They just lose themselves in this activity. And we can all agree sometimes that is a very nice feeling. Normal has become the new awesome. So, yes. And just forgetting about everything that might be creating a little bit of stress, you can just let it go and just feel wonderful. And then we'll be introducing some new themes. Well, maybe more like new spin on old themes. So I know for 2021, we're trying to do a lot of phrases like bless me indeed, miracles will happen, very positive, inspirational sayings that you can focus on while you're creating the vision for your life. So you love the whistling in the background? That's funny. Well, you might be kidding. You might be serious. I don't know. Yeah, it's the sound issue I'm having, but I'm glad you love it. Yeah, we're having some little bit of some sound issues. So yeah, it's minimizing my music in the background, and I think it creates a little bit of a tinny whistle. That is the one thing. I have great new visuals, but I am still working with my sound just a little bit. And I did about 15 sound tests today, recorded sound tests, and so I'm still working on my all of that, my all of that, as I say. Yes. So I will get it because I know there are solutions out there. But I'm glad it's at least enjoyable to one person. I don't know. Or you're just being really nice to me. All right, so let's see. And we have used Little Buddy a lot into this small area. And now we're about to get to that point where we'll have to use our little bit brush for quite a bit. Because we've got lots of little tiny curves and little tiny areas. And I think it's about time to go ahead and switch. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take my little buddy, put him in the water for right now. And then let's go ahead and grab, this is my little bit brush. Awesome little liner brush. And I will say, remember with our kits, I was talking about how it's the Mars Black, and it's a very thick, rich, creamy paint. So sometimes you do have to add a little bit of water into it. I've been using some of my student grade paint over here. And so it's pretty fluid all on its own. You typically don't have to add any water to it. But with the kits, I do encourage you to add a little bit to it. And then you can do a quick little twist here into the paint. And then that helps rotate the end of that brush into a nice fine point. And so then I'll use this little guy to go ahead and work in and around these little areas here. So lots of little tiny areas here. And then with my planning, as I get back around to filling all this in, I'll strategically wait, let everything, make sure you get everything to have enough setup and dry time before you work in your solid colors on black. So at home, you don't have any scheduling you have to do. Nobody's really watching you paint. So you can absolutely take that time to let it all set up and dry. And you definitely want to have a very dry black that's set up because you don't want it to interrupt any of the bright colors that you'll come back in with into like the little birds and the flowers, because it can turn them into like a kind of a gray mess. So you want to avoid all that. And just, again, all you have to do is let it set up and dry. And if you're impatient, then I do recommend using like a hair dryer. Is really helpful. You can, hit that and just make sure it's all dry real quickly. Lots of little details in here. So I am seeing a little bit of that transparency, so you can see how that makes, it's a little bit spotty. I'm going to actually bring this closer so you can see. See right in there, and then right in there, it's a little bit spotty. And so I'll tell you, this is where your water really helps. You can add a little bit of water, and it just fills right into those areas. Much greater ease by adding just a little bit more water. Yeah, that's a lot easier. We're getting there. Just lots of little details. My honey bear's back in here.
Nap time.
Did you say nap time?
I did.
Yeah. He likes to come in here and sleep while I do this. Isn't that a wonderful compliment? Put my honey bear to sleep. Oh, well.
You're relaxing to listen.
Well, thank you. He says I'm relaxing to listen to. So we all have our strengths. And then my sweet little puppy dog is in here too, and she loves to come in here. So yeah, we have a little fire going. It's like painting. Well, it feels like a fire. It's actually a little gas heater, but Lots of detail. And I'm going to continue to add more water. Just makes it a lot easier again to get into those really tiny little areas. Got a little bit of peekaboo coming in through here. We don't want to lose that. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. Let's see, we have a little bit of peekaboo in here. And you can actually do a little bit of, extra cut in with your black, because you can always come back over the top and work in even more of that delicate leaf work right over the top and just help fill in, because it's a really simple technique too. And just a little bit more up here. Not much though. So I've got a little bit of this harsh black coming right next to the gray again, and I want to transition it again. So I'm going to come back in with my white, cleaned off my brush a little bit, came back in with a little bit and that white, and we're going to feather this back in here. Now an even bigger brush. This is Mama. Oops. And a little bit more water. And then go back in with a little more black on that side. Got Mama, I'm getting a little bit more water, and then we're going to just softly blend this back in. I'm going to do a little bit more of some water and some white. And if you have an even bigger brush in this area too, that can also be really helpful. So like we have a Big Daddy brush. It's also for sale on our website. And let me give you a visual on that too. No, I won't, because I don't have one nearby. Never mind. It's bigger. Like that. It's way far away. I don't want to get up. All right. So we have a nice fade there. I'm going to work in just a little bit more. Just working on that transition a little bit. I usually have to rinse out a lot and then come back in with some cleaner water so that it doesn't stay muddy, especially with this dark color that we're working in. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and I think we've got a lot of dry area working in through here. I'm going to make sure and just kind of remove any excess because I want it to set up and dry quickly. Working at home, you shouldn't have to worry about that too much. Just let it dry naturally on its own. I just want to make sure that I don't have any black that interrupts the really light, pretty colors that I'm wanting to do. All right, so we're going to use our little bit brush now, and then we're going to mix up some really pretty like turquoise color for the birds here. So we'll be using, let's see, we'll be using some Viridian. Try to make sure you see that. So some Viridian there. And then let's also grab a little bit of this bright yellow green. And then also some primary cyan blue. So I'm going to grab some white and a little bit of blue and a little bit of the Viridian first. We're going to look at that and see how that goes. Yeah, I think I like that just the way it is. And I can even, you can darken it up a little bit if you want it to be a bit more blue. Viridian will give it more of a teal quality. All right, so now I want to do a little bit of a twist into the paint that gives me a nice fine point. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a little circle around that little head of the bird there. So little bit's a great tool to make around it, make it, come around these little tiny curves here. So you'll take this out to a nice fine point. You can keep that pretty simple if you want, just a solid color, or you can add a touch into a little bit of white here and just kind of push a little bit of white through there, right through the background, just a little bit, just to kind of help add a little bit of a feathering to it, a little bit of texture. All right, and same thing on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and make my birds match. You can do two different colors if you want. So a little bit of a rounded head there. Then we're going to taper that back down, thins out in the neck, and then it gives a little bit of fullness around the wingspan. And then a little touch of white. All right, it's looking really pretty. And then we're going to go ahead and do just a light branch on this, really light heather gray. So I've got my white here nearby, and then a little bit of black. So it almost has the look of like the aspen tree bark, but it does have nice contrast to the black sky. Now, if you want to add a little bit of a brown quality, I'm going to keep mine more of this light color, but I'm going to show you that color mix because with the kit, it's a little odd. The brown, you'll have to mix cadmium orange. And hello, I see more people. Let's see. So hi, Billy, Deborah, Jenna, Acacia. Oh, you know what? I can't sort this out yet. Look at me. I've got the little foil lid here. So let's go ahead and lift that off. I'll do a little touch of that. So to make brown, you have to mix orange, cadmium orange, and some black. So I want to give you a visual on that in case you want some brown in your tree. So look at that. That just makes a nice, beautiful brown. It's just orange and black. It's lovely. All right. So you can add a little bit of that, make a light brown too. I might touch into a little bit of that just to see how you can add some white to it as well. That would still contrast with your black background. So that is also an option. So I'm going to go ahead and work into this little tree branch here. Again, still using my little bit brush. And you can add a little bit of water to this too so that it will flow well into that space. And for the most part, I'm just going to get into those tree branches. And if I have a little bit of overflows, like I'm coming over this leaf, it's okay. I'm going to rework that here in a little bit. Again, just a nice soft gray, coming with a little bit more white. And my roses will come in over the top here too. So the belly of my brush is getting pretty full here. So I'm going to do a quick little, like load it up, but then spin it out so that I can get a nice fine point again. And as I kind of take it out to the outer edges, I'm going to add a little bit of water to this too. So add a little bit of water, twist it out. And then we want this little branch to kind of end with a really light hand. So we're going to kind of take that out to a fine point, like a little Y shape. And we'll make a few of these that just, there's not much that the actual line work can do for you because it's all covered with black, but you can definitely come back over the black. And then, like, for example, make some tiny little delicate branches that come out into the space. And that definitely helps it belong to its environment. Just kind of right over the top there. And we want to make sure we continue our little branch all the way through here, making sure we give our little birds a place to sit. And then I can even do like a little bit of a white highlight here over the top. Find a place to put this. I'm getting a little crowded. Come in for this. Let me turn this a little bit so that I don't block. My arm doesn't come over the entire canvas. I'm going to turn this for just a moment. That's better. And that way I can work here on this side, not have my arm cover everything. Wonderful. All right, so again, we're just coming in with another branch. I always try to make sure that my branch is thicker and fuller towards the middle of the tree, and then as it gets farther away from the middle of the tree and comes out to the sky, then it becomes a little bit thinner. And branches can certainly have lots of little imperfect, like little nubbies on them, so you can, kind of push your brush into a little bit of texture on the top there. I think that helps it look more like a real tree. All right, so let's go ahead and turn this back around. And we're going to go ahead and work on our roses next. All right, so with that, I'll give myself a little bit more room here. Let's make some roses. All right, so we're going to be using some primary magenta. And let's grab some cadmium red. And then let's go ahead and do some cadmium orange too, because with that we can also have a nice little, this looks like a coral color too that we can pull into the mix. And then of course we have our white nearby. All right, so I've got a little bit of white, and let's go ahead and work into that primary magenta. And you can add a little bit of that cadmium red. So that's a really pretty color. And then let's add some more white to that. See, now if you go with some of that orange, then it starts to take on a really pretty peach color. So there's another fun option. And then I'm going to go ahead and start to work this into the background. So at first, all my roses just look like big, lumpy circles. And that will give us some really nice texture initially, a really good base for the roses. And don't be scared, because we work in a lot of fun texture right over the top of this. But for right now, this is really the best way to go ahead and place in all of that color. So I'm just grabbing little bits of all those shades that we had initially. Again, that's primary magenta, and then our cadmium orange, and then also our cadmium red. Just kind of like big, lumpy circles to start with. And we're going to overlap over that soft fade. You start doing some of that so that it looks a little bit more natural, what's happening here. You start bringing some things into the foreground, and that really helps the design. So now we have a nice variety of different shades of those roses, just kind of ranging from the pinks and the corals, little touches of red in there. All right, so now I'm going to come in, same little bit brush, I'm just washing up my brush a little bit now, and just some pure white paint. So we'll go ahead and touch into the pure white paint, just like that. And then we want to go ahead and start to make our pattern work over the top. So it kind of looks like tiny little parentheses, but I wiggle it as I go. And I'll bring those in a circular pattern all the way around the shape of the rose. And you just repeat that on all of those. So again, a little bit of a wiggle, and then little, like almost like a little half circle shape, or like a little parentheses. And you can already start to see how they are starting to look like little abstract roses. And we'll do this on all of them. You can have some bigger, like little smudges of white too. So it just, you can play with it a little bit. But keep your hand really delicate, very light touch on this. And again, just tiny little half circles. And then just keep that going in a nice circular pattern all the way around the shape of the rose. All right, and now we're going to come in with the darkest color over the top of the roses. So a little bit brush again, darkest shade. That's gonna grab some of that primer magenta. It's pretty dark. So we'll do just a tiny, and some of these we'll go ahead and push in what kind of looks like a little comma. That's that little shadow right in the middle of the rose. And then you can kind of bring in just a few little touches of that darkest shadow with the petal. So again, like a little comma right in the center. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's almost like a little push. And then just add a few more little accents of that darkest shadow that comes around. Again, right in the middle, make sure you get that little comma shape. It's that little shadow right in the middle of the rose. Okay, that's looking really beautiful. And then we can start to work in our beautiful greens. Go ahead and put my sleeves a little bit. All right, so we have some beautiful green nearby. We have some bright yellow green. We also have the Viridian nearby. So that's a really pretty look. Let's go ahead and grab both of those together. And you can also push a little bit of white in there too. Keeps it really bright. Do a little twist here with our brush into the paint. So that loads it up, but it also twists it into a nice fine point. And then a little bit more of that bright yellow green just in a pure state too, to get good coverage and really cover up over the top. The other thing you can do is just a tiny little touch on the canvas. So if you want like little details, you can just kind of almost just touch down to make it look like tiny little leaves on the branches. I'm taking these out into a nice fine point. Again, just a little bitty V and then off to a delicate point there. I'm still just grabbing some of this bright yellow green and a little bit of that viridian. And the basic shape here, it kind of feels like you make tiny little parentheses and then they just connect to a point. That's the easiest way to think about it for a beginner. And of course you can add a little touch of a curve to it. I like to add a little bit of that highlight of the bright yellow green just in a pure state right over the top too. Gives it some nice texture. So again, I'm coming back in. Let's do a little refresh here. So this is my viridian, my bright yellow green. And then just in case, let me also show you, let's add a little bit of cadmium green to this too. Just a nice bright emerald green. And again, it's that little push. It almost feels like you make, again, like little parentheses and another little parentheses, and then they just connect, and then you just fill them in. Make sure my plate stays out of the way here. Lots of little delicate leaves. And then I like to follow up again with that, just little touches of that bright yellow green. I'm going to touch up my, I don't want to lose that little tail. So I've got my little bit brush, rework into that blue. Let's spin it out again. And then let's go ahead and touch into that little tail there. A little bit of white. I'm going through a lot of this bright yellow green pretty quickly, so I'm probably going to have to reload with some of that. Let's grab a little bit more of that. So here we go, some more bright yellow green. And then I'm going to get a little bit closer. I'm going to turn this. Then as we get closer to the leaves on the other side as well, I'll turn it a little bit. So again, this is my Viridian green, bright yellow green, a little bit of cadmium green. This kit comes with a lot of really beautiful greens, so it makes it really fun to play with all those in the mix. It's looking good. There's a little one right there too. All right, now we're going to turn this over to the side so that my hand doesn't go all the way across. And again, just try to think about that real simple little parentheses, and then fill it in. And then I'm going to grab a little bit of this bright yellow green and then just kind of touch right over the top. Get that bright shade popping. You can make a few little dots of this. And very lightly, I'm going to put a few little dots right in between there. Oops. So sorry when I hit the mic. I don't mean to. A nice fine point there. All right, so now let's rinse off a little bit here and then turn it back around. All right, so now we need to work in our moon, beautiful moon here. I think I need another light, quite possibly. So I'm going to grab some primary yellow. And I'm going to warm it up even more with some cadmium yellow. Let's get that in frame there. And let's grab some white. So just a hint of that cadmium, mostly our primary yellow and then our white. And then I'm going to go ahead and push this into the moon shape here. And the lettering bleeding through is definitely done by intention. All right, so we've got that worked in. It's pretty light. And then we can actually rinse out my mama brush now. And let's get a little bit of a soft fade around the edge. So again, cleaned off our brush, and then we just add a little bit of just pure water while that yellow is still wet. And we're going to take this around with some firm pressure and get a little bit of that golden glow to come in and around that little orb of light that we made in the beginning. But that way it won't just be a harsh bit of gold right in the center. It'll kind of naturally radiate out with a softer transition over that lighter shade, that progression of lighter grays that we made in the very beginning. And then this little bit of gold will just kind of come around in a circular pattern with a little bit of that water. So lots of circular motion here. And I'm, of course, being a little bit more careful as I cut in and around a little bit of floral work here because I don't want to interrupt that. And I'll drag a little bit more of this into the outer edges, big sweeping motions of it. Just a little tiny touch of that yellow is what we did, and then I added a lot of water. So again, just a little tiny touch of that, and then now let's come into some more water. I'm going to dry it off my brush a little bit, remove that excess water. All right, now I'm going to come back into my little birdie, a little bit of a sweep over the top. So I'm working back into that really beautiful turquoise that we had initially. Then I'm just going to retouch up the little top there. And we have a little peekaboo white there anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and touch that up a little bit. A white highlight there. All right, so I left behind a little bit of a reference in the background for the I Love You to the Moon and Back. And what I do recommend for beginners is that you just let all of this set up and dry, and then you take your trace and then you go ahead and place it over the top, and then you can just rework all that. It will leave an impression that will look a lot like just graphite or pencil, and then you can just use your permanent marker that comes with the kit and then go right over the top. So that's what I recommend for beginners to do. And then I'm going to go ahead and just find my work here. So basically I've got And I'm going to do a little bit of freehanding because mine definitely got a little bit too obscured up here. But I have my love here. Just want to make sure I kind of stay on track. And then I've got my eye. Oh, here's my eye. Oh, I forgot. I did it over here to the side. Thought maybe I did it up there. I'm glad I looked back at my notes. To the moon and back. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab our little bit brush again, and we'll take some black paint and a little bit of water so that it's really easy to move. Do a little twist here into it. So this will load up our brush with paint, but it also twists it into a nice fine point. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my little top of the eye here. And you can, of course, do a different color if you want. Now, as you're working in over the lettering, you do want to make sure that you use a very gentle hand. And as you're doing loops, which an example of a loop would be like in the L and the O, you've got that negative space in the middle. And you definitely want to make sure that you go around it so that you don't close off your loop and lose the shape of that letter. And remember to keep twisting it out here. And I'm careful to not get that negative space. So do want to be very delicate around these little O's here. And you also, if you are using the permanent marker, you do want to be really careful and always make sure you use it on a dry canvas. So it will immediately ruin a Sharpie or a permanent marker if it's on wet paint. So you do want to be careful with that. And of course, we do have our little again down here. You can leave that off if you want. All right. So very good. We've got really good progress here. And then our last final touch is just to go ahead and sign your masterpiece. So I typically do that here at the very bottom, and you can do that with like a gold permanent marker or even just some white paint. So I'm going to go ahead and use my little bit brush here. I was hoping I have a really small one. don't have this one, so I'm going to have to really twist into it here. Grab some water. That makes it a little bit easier, more fluid. Making the signature very delicate. And ta-da! We are done with our beautiful little birdies in the sky. I love you to the moon and back again. All right, so it's been so much fun, and everything that you need for this painting kit is on our website, tipsyartist.com. So have fun with this. They are very relaxing. We make everything very fun and easy for beginners. And so we've had so much fun with y'all today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you real soon.